Welcome to UpYourStack podcast. I'm Noah Berk, host of the show. I'm also the co-founder of OBO, an elite HubSpot solution partner. Every week we feature some of our favorite HubSpot app developers who've either built their applications on HubSpot or have pre-built HubSpot integrations to help get the most out of your HubSpot tech stack. And I'm really excited for my guest, Maddie, who's built an AI agent to help you schedule more qualified sales meetings. Well, Maddie, welcome. I'm excited to have you on the show today.
Thanks so much.
Maddie, tell me, what is it you guys do? This AI agent, I know a little bit, so I don't want to share all the spoilers here, but tell me a little bit more about this.
Yeah, no, happy to. So I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called Scheduler AI. We make the joke that we spend a lot of time with people whose meetings matter. Some people hate meetings. They don't like them at all. But if you're in marketing, sales, even recruiting, and any type of B2B service industry, a lot of the meetings you have, you love, right? And those are the pipeline meetings that help you grow your business. So what we do is we help businesses instantly connect with their best inbound leads by having an AI agent that integrates directly into HubSpot to conversationally engage, qualify, route, and book all of those warm leads in HubSpot in just seconds, 24/7.
This is so cool. I gotta ask, like, hasn't this been solved before? Like, what's unique about your approach to solving this for clients?
Yeah, so every sales or revenue leader or growth leader wants to set, pipeline meetings. They want to set qualified pipeline meetings. And so today, there's a lot of ways that they do that, right? The first thing they do is they're going to make a playbook, right? And they're going to map that out, and they're going to have a lot of templates, and they're going to have a lot of forms, and they're going to have scheduling links. And what they're going to do a lot of is they're going to talk at their leads. They're not going to talk with them very quickly, right? Because they're going to throw all this stuff at them, and they're going to wait for that lead to respond or for that lead to fill out that form. And the problem with talking at someone is it's always their decision, right? On like, do I talk back? Do I want to fill out your form? Do I actually want to respond to you? Like, I kind of know you're not real. And so we see people doing that. They're putting a ton of work on their buyers. And so their buyers are kind of standing off to the sidelines being like, look, I'm only going to talk to you, when I decide I'm going to go through that full process myself. The difference between a scheduling link and an AI scheduling assistant is it's actually going to talk with your leads right away, right? And it's going to start a conversation, and it's going to have a nurture dialogue, and it's going to actually create that relationship-led booking experience that actually is going to increase your conversion.
Is this all part of the old adage, in sales, where they essentially say, like, if you the first one to respond generally gets the deal, and if you wait 12 hours, 24 hours, 36 hours, the likelihood of you closing that business continues to go down. Do you see that with this type of application and tool, that it's helping people be able to get that meeting scheduled faster?
Yeah, I mean, I think speed to lead is one of those like 10 commandments of B2B sales, right? And you mentioned like some people interpret that as speed to respond. We need to be really focusing on speed to connect, right? We talk about connect rates, right? And connecting, again, is not pushing a second automated email at someone. It's, again, reaching out saying, hey, I noticed you. I actually have some questions about the things that I noticed. And I'm wondering if it makes sense to continue this dialogue or perhaps put you in touch with the human that could help you. Yeah. We happen to be married co-founders. So we had 2 big jobs. We had 3 kids. We had a dog. One day on the drive home from church.
I'm assuming we still have these kids. And you still have the dog.
Everybody's still there. Yeah, everybody is still okay. This was just in this moment of time, right? To bear it. But yes, they're all doing great. And we had just run into friends that we valued very, very much. And we'd said, hey, you know what? We should totally get together. But the reason that was a frustration point was because we'd said that the week before. And we'd said that the week before that. Mm-hmm. And we realized that, when it came to scheduling a work meeting, an appointment, time with friends, it was a nightmare.
Sure.
And in that moment of frustration, just human frustration, I was like, this is ridiculous. You should just be able to add your people to a chat, describe what you want to schedule, and something somewhere should look at everything and say, okay, got it. This is when you're all free.
Sounds pretty amazing.
And we went a step further and we said, and that's because it doesn't start with a calendar. It starts with a conversation. It starts with context. It starts with a playbook. And the funny thing about that insight, right, that it starts with a conversation and context, not a calendar, is as we brought this technology to market, there were people that have known that for a long, long time, right? And it's people who build their businesses through meetings. They know you don't just walk up to someone and say, hey, how about tomorrow at 3?
It's always be closing for the meeting or closing for the next steps or closing for a yes or closing for a no. I mean, I think they drill that into every salesperson's head from the moment they can start selling or at least picking up the phone.
Yeah. And so it was really interesting. We kind of took that human insight and built what is now patented AI before AI was cool. So we received a full US patent on this. We were building before OpenAI. Obviously, the launch of large scale LLMs has fueled our growth and fueled our success as well. And we really brought it to market and said, where can we uniquely apply this AI to help businesses grow? And that's really the match and the marriage that started to form, was obviously people whose meetings grow their business, right? Meetings that are happening at scale, meetings that need to follow a specific process, but that ones that still have that nuance, right? There's still nuance where artificial intelligence can uniquely inform and enhance the experience. So that's ultimately where we started to build.
So why, obviously on this particular podcast, we talk about organizations who've either integrated with or built on top of HubSpot. In this case, you've integrated with HubSpot. But why pick HubSpot to integrate with? What was it about that application and that software? You're like, hey, this is a great place for us to do this.
I mean, beyond my founder crush on Dharmesh Shah, if you're not following him, you have to. One day it'll be like me meeting my fan crush. It'll be like me saying, hi, Dharmesh.
Well, maybe at inbound you'll be able to.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure he'll see this podcast and be like, okay, sure. but really, HubSpot's super unique, right? So the first thing let me first tell you why we started building our AI agents directly into CRMs, because I think that is an important piece of context. We thought at the dawn of AI that what everybody needed and wanted was a co-pilot. And oh, by the way, we were not alone. Literally everyone was like, co-pilots, yes, these are great. What everybody needs is a co-pilot that lives in their pocket, every single human, and it just pops out on command and it schedules your meetings for you and you never have to do that again. And
sounds great.
It is. Yeah, it sounds awesome. It is great. It feels great. Here's the challenge. When you still have to be doing that, when you still have to be guiding that and prompting that and being in the driver's seat of that experience, you may have improved your productivity. Now I can schedule 60 meetings in as fast as I can type, but you haven't actually set the human free from that task. So that's one problem, is we were giving people co-pilots that were improving productivity, but they weren't actually allowing humans to go do something else.
And what were those co-pilots like? Are they kind of like scheduling apps out there now that would, hey, here's my availability, you find availability on my calendar? Like, how would you describe it?
For us, it was you add the AI to an email, you add the rest of the people that you want to meet with, and you say, hey, let's find 30 minutes next week. Right. And there's still value in that. And to be clear, people still use the AI for that. And that's what we're saying, though, is you've only gotten me to half of my journey. The second problem with co-pilots is when there was one and it was called OpenAI, or if you just had my AI scheduling assistant, that's manageable. When there's 5,000 and every single piece of software you use needs to be co-piloted, you're not only not being set free, but now you have to learn a lot of new behaviors on almost everything that you're doing. And so what we've seen is it's almost choice paralysis, right? Like I now have so many options and so many co-pilots. I'm not even sure, you know what, honestly, it might just be easier to do this the way I always did it.
Yeah.
And then the third problem that we found when it comes to using AI solely as a co-pilot was I actually spent, like I said, a good part of a decade spending hundreds of millions of dollars to help people shape how they buy soap. That's what, right? We do at P&G, right? And that's what we did. And What's really, really interesting when you get into those core fundamentals of how people consume products is people create compensative behaviors when something doesn't work right? Like,
Sure.
let's take scheduling a meeting. That kind of sucks. I have to open up calendar A. I have to look at the lines over here. I have to match it with what that person's saying. I have to find the little pretty slot, or I shove them a calendar link and then they have to go through and do that, right? And that's kind of a crappy process. Pretty much everyone would say that is not ideal.
Okay.
But it's the way my autopilot knows how to do it. And so when it comes to real-time application, it is actually harder for us to change our compensative behaviors, our autopilots, than it is to do something that might be more simple and might be easier. And we see that all the time, right? Like, it's like, I know that this is the harder way to do it, but it's the way I know how to do it. It's going to work every time. So I don't know why we're still talking. And so that's what happened to us. And by the way, to almost every other AI company right now, is they realize that while co-pilots are great, they have serious limitations. So you just got a story nobody on this podcast asked for. It's going to lead to the actual answer of your question, which is, why a CRM? Because the way to overcome challenges of choice confusion, habit change, not really being able to set yourself free from a task is by creating a zero moment of truth or a trigger point, which says, go do. And I'm still in control of that trigger, and I'm still in control of what you're going to go do and why you're going to go do it. But then once I've set that up, you go do, and I go do something else. And that was the magic marriage where we said, let's transform this co-pilot into an AI autopilot, and let's have the CRM be the trigger point where everybody is already lining up their workflows and lining up their plays that says, okay, AI, when this happens, that's when you go. And what that did was, now, instead of the AI waiting around for humans to call it into the game, it was able to start operating on its own 24/7 and actually start delivering value back to people when they did nothing. Now, here's the really interesting part of the story. So now you get automatic value and you're just like, whoa, it set a meeting. Whoa, it set another meeting. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. And guess what their next question was? Wait a minute, can I co-pilot this thing? And the reason was, and I'm kidding you not, this is like all real and you can see it in the data. The reason was because when you use AI to give people value first without them having to do anything, it establishes trust and interest and intent, which allows them to level up and get more and more and more out of that software and out of that capability. So that's why we decided to say, wait a minute, we are going to start selling AI autopilots guided and controlled by your CRM. And control is a very real and important point when we talk about AI. Sure, we'll get to that. But that way, when you get this AI up and running, which you can do in 5 minutes or less, road to value be 30 minutes.
So who often are you talking to inside an organization who may be looking into this agent? Is it the chief revenue officer? Is it the head of marketing? Who is exploring this with you?
You know, I could give you the PC answer of, I speak to these people that fit this profile. So if you're listening, give me a call. But I'm just going to use this podcast to be honest. Enterprises are still figuring out staffing AI.
That's a really good, interesting concept there. Who owns staffing AI? Because, take your chief revenue officer. Obviously a role to expand revenue, find operations, handling sales, the recurring revenue on the back end, the service teams. It depends upon what their responsibilities ultimately are. But there's one piece in general that everyone's looking for is a force multiplier for their individuals and their people. And, that CRO saying, how do I make my sales team more productive? And I know I mentioned earlier it was the time to lead, but you said it's the communication that's the most important part. So is this a force multiplier for sales teams? Is this a force multiplier for marketing teams? Like, who is being evaluated and judged based upon their performance here?
I would say the cool thing about the AI agents tied to the HubSpot workflows is that you can build AI agents to the KPIs that fit the functions that they serve. So for example, a sales and revenue team is going to care most about quickly converting those MQLs. So an agent that is integrated and designed and conversationally controlled to do that is going to serve the sales and revenue team by acting not only as a force multiplier for productivity, but a force multiplier for qualified sales meetings. And that is one soapbox that I will die on. Productivity is great, but the reality is you need AI tools that deliver tangible business results on the revenue side of the business. Because yes, I can save you time. And in theory, that gets me more, but that's really hard to measure, right? Versus saying my AI tool handled 500 inbound leads, it qualified 400 of them, it routed all 400 of them to the right regional rep. It never forced them to fill out a link. It set the meeting, it reminded them, and for the 50 that needed to reschedule, it handled that too, right? Like those are real KPIs in the pipeline of meetings set, meeting held, meetings closed. And I think that's an important piece to think about when you're choosing AI tools.
Tools like HubSpot are leveraged not just by B2B organizations, but they're also leveraged by B2C organizations, they're leveraged by nonprofits, they're leveraged by associations. It just came to mind the other day, my wife had booked me a massage. It was my birthday recently, and it was very nice of her to do so. She was having scheduling going back and forth, and she tried doing it online. And then they said they'll call her, and it was like the next day they call and they go back and forth. Just what you were describing there also makes me realize, I think we're talking quite a bit about B2B, but it also sounds like B2C. Whether you're taking your car into the shop, or whether or not you're scheduling that massage appointment, or whether do you see our companies leveraging it in the B2C environment as much as they're leveraging in the B2B, or is it strictly a really B2B application right now?
So, as founders, we got to explore the whole market before we started to even dial down and dial in, and that's a normal process. But there really are three areas of meetings that exist at the macro level. There's work meetings, right? And those are internal/external, but they're work meetings. There's appointments, and then there's social meetings, right? And so 100%, the B2C appointment setting business is massive. We actually won Square's global hackathon not too long ago. So our AI was able to integrate directly in to set appointments for B2C businesses. Same thing, right? Like I want a text message. I want to text, this to get my massage. I don't actually want to get on a website. I don't actually want to talk to someone. I just want to shoot a text message and say, hey, do you have anything next Friday? And I want that to just be handled, right? So 100%, we not only can and do that, that was that particular team that won that challenge.
This has obviously been explored for quite some time. Where do you see the most rapid adoption then? Because you have explored these different models. I mean, is that the reason why, you believe B2B, higher ticket, generally more at stake than, let's say, a massage appointment?
I think adoption and instant road to value are not necessarily correlated. I think where you're looking for when you're an AI builder or someone who serves businesses with AI is again, where can you apply the AI in a way that instantaneously gives maximum value creation, even more than maximum user adoption. And I say that because once again, you have to remember, in the case of AI agents, you're not using it. You're not adopting it. You are controlling it and guiding it to get an outcome, right? So your metric is now different. Your metric is how much value, tangible value, is this AI creating? How much is it? How reliable is it? And how much can I scale it? Much more than how fast is it being adopted by my organization, by other organizations, or by the users. So we've been very, very focused on where can this AI be applied to create the most material value, the most quickly, the most reliably. And where that has really been acting as a force multiplier for companies that have fabulous inbound sales motions, that know how to connect with their customers. And really the only barrier to those great connections is that logistic. that needs to be handled at scale over and over in a really curated fashion.
There may be a lot of listeners out there like, well, this sounds awesome, but I have right now a chatbot on my website, and it goes through and is answering the question. Someone comes in, asks them some questions, and it goes through a whole tree of responses. And at the end, it will say, let's schedule a meeting. What's different about, let's call it the chatbot approach to have it on your website to schedule a meeting versus your tool and how it goes about scheduling meetings and appointments?
The way I would kind of liken it is if I walked into a library and a librarian said, hey, do you have a question about literally anything? I'm a librarian. I've read all the books in here. What do you got for me? And they say, well, I've got these questions. I'm like, oh, I could tell you lots about that. Oh, you have a question about this? Let's just pull out that book. And then at the very end, the librarian said, now that you've spent all this time in my library, would you like to spend more time with another librarian? You might be librarianed out, right? Now, so let me flip that example on you. So you didn't walk into a library. You walked in to a storefront and you said, hey, I got a question. My shoes, they got a hole in them. And I just need to know like what shoes are like okay for like running because like I don't want the hole in my shoes anymore. The salesperson could answer that. They could, right? They could be like, any of these shoes don't have holes in them. That is the correct answer. But they might say something like, oh, you have a hole in your shoes. Is that because you're a runner? Is that because, you actually want to be using it for daily wear? And right, they're going to start to ask.
So the content around it and
100%.
The context of those questions.
And why are they doing that? Because they're trying to create a relationship and a value equation and meaningful help that maximizes value. And so I give you guys that reference point to say, let's go back to that chatbot example. Some chatbots are trained to be librarians and answer all the questions that people have. And if you have a PLG motion, if you don't actually ever really need a person to close that sale, I would use them. But if the role of your AI is not to answer every question they have, but rather to get them to the human who can answer the questions in the right way, then you need to use an AI scheduling assistant.
That's awesome. That's a really good analogy. Thank you for sharing that. It reminds me of, to your point, when, especially great salespeople, in fact, as you brought the shoe example, I recently got new running shoes. And I came in there, I'm like, I'm an amateur runner. I buy new running shoes every couple of years. I didn't care, DSW or Dick's, wherever I'm going. But my wife's like, hey, go check out this running shoe place. I went in there. I was like, hey, I need some running shoes. I was like, those look cool. They're like, well, sir, tell me more about how you run. I'm like, well, I put one foot in front of the other, kid. But I was like, all right, well, I run about anywhere from 3 to 4 miles, sometimes less, sometimes more uphill. They're like, okay, show me how you run, jog. And they kept going, and ultimately in the end, I ended up buying shoes from there. And I bought shoes because I felt more confident that these were the right shoes for me. Now I could have gone online. I'm gonna go buy them, maybe save $5-10 elsewhere. But I was like, the value I got from that whole experience was I felt more confident in that pair of running shoes that was gonna be everything I wanted it to be. But it was a dialogue, it was a conversation. And from what I'm hearing from you today, what your AI agent does is builds a dialogue. It isn't just answering questions. And I think AI is very good at just answering questions right now. And what you've built is a tool that enables an organization to deploy essentially more people without having to deploy more people to be able to answer and be able to form a dialogue with that particular prospect or customer. And that's awesome. So what's the future of this tool? Where are you headed now? What's next? What's on your roadmap?
Yeah, so you kind of started to get at it even with what you were saying there, which is, when people start buying these AI tools of the future, and these AI tools are being built, that we build them, other people build them, buying tech will be more like hiring a person than it will be purchasing a tool, right? And when we go to hire people, it's that same thing. You want the skill of a salesperson. You want the experience of a salesperson. You also want to be able to train that person on what makes you and your company the processes that make you guys the winning processes that you have, right? Like lazy AI to try to get a process is the worst thing you could do, right? What you want to do is you want to use AI to galvanize your process, and you want to hire AI agents and then be able to control them so that they can execute your process at scale. Now, I use the word control. It's kind of a tough word, but I didn't say train, because today most people think that training AI means that all of the people that use these AI agents are going to need, a degree in machine learning from MIT to run LLMs and buy GPUs and all that stuff. And I don't think that's true, helpful, or real. But what you do need is for someone to be able to come into an AI platform and act like a manager, to say, okay, here's what you're going to do, right? And if I were managing a person, not an AI, let's say I was managing a person and their job was to qualify my inbound leads. First thing I do is say, when this happens, you say this, right? There's a very limited,
yes, we've seen that. Correct.
Right? When I come in, you say this. You don't get to say anything you want. You say this, right? And we've been in that place. That's where our come from state. But then the interesting thing is they're qualified if. That if is subjective, right? If they answer in this way, if they indicate this intent, if they have this type of reaction to that type of question, right? And that's where AI can come in and be like, okay, I've looked at all of the data in the CRM. I already know they're at a company with 30 people. I don't need to ask them that question, right? But what I'm not clear on is if they really are looking for a tool like mine, or maybe one that's like someone else that often gets confused as mine, right? And so the cool thing about our future state, again, I'm always going to get back to your question, I promise, is we are really enhancing the ability for our customers and users to actually be able to set up their own custom AI agents based on their own playbook with the right hard points and soft points and intuition points, so that they get the benefit of AI that can understand context, that can understand conversation, that can understand intent, but they also get the control of the templates and the playbooks that they've worked so hard to build and so hard to implement. So that really is the next stage for us that I'm really, really excited about. And honestly, we're already there. Like, we've literally launched this ability for people to go in and set up their own AI agents and connect them with HubSpot. It takes 5 minutes, and we've already launched that into the ecosystem. And I think I'm just most excited to see that evolve and grow.
Awesome. And thank you for sharing that. I'm gonna ask one more question. What do you like most about HubSpot these days?
Dharmesh. No, I'm just kidding.
I thought that's exactly what you were going to say.
I think I like HubSpot for the people that it has managed to bring in, and the growth and the people. Like, I've met with folks on their team. I've built for customers that use them. I think, one of their principles early on was to build products that people use, not products that have all the features in the world. And I think we model everything we're doing. We want AI agents that serve sales teams in a way that truly sets them free to go close deals and go create new opportunities. And so I think, whether it's their ethos, their client base, or even just, obviously, they've made it a developer-friendly ecosystem to bring on innovators like us and to bring in innovators like us. Those really are the reasons why we prioritize them. And it's funny, right? You've seen there are companies that have truly made themselves by their ability to create great developer relationships and bring great innovation into their platforms. And I think HubSpot, probably in the CRM space, is far and away the best. And I can actually say that one pretty confidently. I feel okay. I feel like that's something I know.
Maddie, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here today. Thank you so much. And again, thank you for joining us. And that wraps it up. Maddie, if our listeners would like to learn more about you and more about the AI agent, how can they learn about that?
Well, number one, DM me on LinkedIn. We like to talk to customers all the time. I will get back to them if I can. I like to talk to customers a lot directly. So my first offer is go ahead and like I said, I might regret this. And then if I don't get back to you, I apologize. But then, check us out at www.scheduler.ai. And again, if I can't, answer your question, someone from my team can.
Awesome. Maddie, thank you again so much. And if you're interested in leveling up your HubSpot, feel free to reach out to the OBO group at www.theobogroup.com. Again, Maddie, thank you for joining us, and everyone, thank you for listening.